It's another exciting Tuesday afternoon. We are here once again to take a look at this day's edition of International Forum. I am Wilson Omasha. It's all about the Israel-Gaza war, explaining the hope of hostages that are in captivity. Don't forget that the Israeli soldiers, they discovered some more dead hostages, and that led to an uproar. That's going to form cross for discussion today. Protest, strike. The Israelis, were they right by mounting more pressure on Hamas? Were they right for paying deaf ears to what the world was saying? And they went all ahead only to discover more dead hostages. Is Hamas being tricky about this whole thing? But is Israel not showing restraint? A good example for a powerhouse, so to speak, that was agitated by a terrorist organization, in quote. My analysts come to the studio, definitely they're going to throw more light into this. Before we go ahead with our discussion, let's take a look at some stories making rounds globally. Let's move straight down to the U.S., where the U.S. election, the campaigns and all that is already heated up. Kamala Harris criticizes Trump over Arlington Cemetery dispute. Yes, anything can be used. Anything can be used in politics. It's like, love or war. They say all is fair in love and war. Donald Trump did something at Arlington Cemetery, and that, my friend, that he got out to with Kamala Harris and the Democrats. And of course, Trump tweeted about it, Harris tweeted about it. It's all about trying to drag the emotions of the U.S. citizens who they are going to vote for come November. Apart from this, Arlington Cemetery have other underlying factor that keeps on making these two to go at each other. Donald Trump is like, saying he is the right man for the job, that the Democrats, Kamala Harris, they're not good enough for the job compared to his capability, that he is the right man. And so many that's beginning to come out of all this squabble. And don't forget also that the debate will soon start. It will soon begin. Yeah, they're all campaigning, going from one end of the U.S. to another. Don't forget, according to opinion poll, Kamala Harris' resourcefulness is beginning to pay off. But Trump is on the top because his own other opinion poll percentage is still on the increase. So it's going to be a case of two elephants duking it out. Who do you think will come out top, the Democrats or the Republicans? Many factors have to be considered in this particular election. Is it going to be Trump again, or is it going to be Kamala Harris, the first female president? If he becomes the female president, the first president of America, how is it going to be? Don't forget, people are hoping for this other woman to be the president, but somehow along the line it didn't work out. But now we have a Kamala Harris that is so strong. Haven't gotten support from Michelle Obama, even gotten support also from other women in the Democrats, and they are supporting him. Would that be enough to unseat or throw off this man, so to speak, in the forthcoming election? Lots and lots of questions be asked, and many people are trying to give answers to these questions. So the time definitely will tell. Moving straight down to Russia and Ukraine war, where there's been claims and counterclaims that Russians are beginning to fire missiles into Kiev. For the first time in a long time, targeting major cities in Kiev because of what Kiev did to them. But said the troops in the outskirts of Russia territory, according to them, captured 1,000 square miles of Russian territory. And of course, Russia, they didn't blink. According to them, Kiev started it first. Russia wanted to maintain the eastern part of Ukraine, saying that is Russian territory. Now that Ukraine have the guts to enter into the border villages and towns of Russia, Russia has been pushed, so to speak, into the war, and they are taking the war back again to the capital of Ukraine. Russia fires missiles at Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, first day of academic year. They are thinking that school resume, but with this disruption by the Russians, do you think that schools will resume? Because there's other things about Ukrainians trying to attack Russians. And the Russians brought down hundreds of drones, you know, trying to target them all the way from Ukraine. They were able to bring them down. And it's like, in pidgin English, bass and boast. Who do you think will break? Who do you think will crack? Who do you think will give the final blow to end this war? It's like each of them is just waiting for a final blow. That deadly blow that will just say, fine, we'll give up, take whatever you want to take, because people are trying to broker peace. They seem not to be listening. Don't forget about the peace brokered by one country. That also led to exchange of prisoners. And after that, Ukraine entered into Russia territory. And now Russia is fighting back. They are pushing seriously back, and the Ukrainians are not finding it funny. Now, despite the fact that we must have been given to the Ukrainian soldiers motivation here and there, it is still not enough to stand against the tempest, the anger of Russians. They are really plummeting Ukraine. I keep on wondering, when will all this stop? Lots of lives being lost, and still, these men are refusing to give up. You get to your glory to Ukraine. Russia is saying the Donbass region is ours. Don't forget also about the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. All this twist and turn, and the world crying and clamoring due to this crisis. How do you think all this will pan out? We're waiting for that deadly blow that will end all manner of nuisances, for them to say, okay, fine, let's come to the round table finally to have this peace talk. If that happens, it's going to be a case of tit for tat. Nobody wants that, but that is what is happening. That is what is going on even right now. Finally, let's get straight down to what is happening under the sea. Yes, if you've seen the movie Titanic, this might really concern you. Now, the image you're seeing right now, these are the image of is the image of Titanic ship that sunk like how many years ago? Over 5 decades now. Striking images reveal depths of Titanic slow decay. The ship is decaying gradually, is giving up gradually. It's a historic artifact. Remember the story about the ship in an iceberg, and the ship breaking almost into 2 in half, sinking and going down, 100% losing their life because of this particular incident. Yes, that is what we're really talking about. So, if you really want to take a look at the Titanic, how they got that movie from, just an except this is it. Decaying to eternity. Nobody knows if they're going to exhume it for a museum relic. We do not know, but it'll be fun to really know, have these on planet Earth, taking it away from the sea. So people can really know how massive this ship is. People can really go out into the museum to see the gigantic nature of this ship. So that's what embarking on a project that will bring up ships that is twice as large as a Titanic, or even if twice as large as Titanic, at least bigger than the Titanic, into minification. So yes, that is what they are working on right now. But Titanic will ever be a ship that many persons look forward to seeing. I wish some people could just make that sacrifice, go down there, bring out the ship, put it in a museum or in an enclosure that people can just go out there to watch, to view, to know the story behind the Titanic. It would have been so wonderful, so wonderful. Well, right now I want to go for a break. When we return, we'll dive into our talk for today about the Israel-Gaza war, the hope of hostages in captivity. Yes, they've seen some dead already. Is Israel right after all by mounting serious offensive against Hamas after discovering those dead hostages? Lots and lots of questions. Don't forget what Joe Biden said. He said Netanyahu is not doing enough for this ceasefire to happen. And the UK also seized 13 out of 350 weapons promised Israel. At this telltale sign for Israel to please calm down so that it can get to the innocent ones in Gaza. After all, you don't need to punish everyone for the sin of 1 or 2 persons. Yesterday or 2 days ago, there was a raid by the Israeli soldiers and some dead hostages were discovered, and that led to a strike in Israel. They were like, when are we going to see our fathers, our mothers, our brothers, and our sisters, bring them home? People are asking, the onslaught of Israel against Hamas in Gaza, are the Israeli forces right by taking the strong stance? How do they pulled back? Would they have gotten or seen those dead hostages? What about the remaining hostages? That is where we're going to start the discussion. With me here in the studio, he is a lecturer in Uniben. I call him the prophet. When you start analyzing, you get to know what I'm talking about. Please join me, welcome. I call him Prof personally. Prof Felix Osareme, welcome to International Forum. I appreciate your coming.
Thank you very much, Wesi.
Right.
Yes, Atom, good afternoon and welcome to the program.
All right. Right now, you've been following this trend. All right. When Hamas struck, they made a big laugh out of everything, saying that Israel is not as strong as people think they were, because able to, like, run through the defense line, the border, killed some, carried some into captivities, and of course, Israel retaliated. They retaliated to the extent that the world was like, complaining, saying, Israel, this is too much. It's too much. You have to apply brakes because of women, men, children suffering because of the onslaught, let us speak, of Israel on Hamas. And of course, there were casualties. But right now, of recent, some dead Israeli hostages were recovered. Is this going to change anything in the stand of Israel against Hamas in this conflict?
Pragmatically, the recovery of 6 bodies 2 days ago by the Israeli Defense Forces will not radically change the trajectory of the ongoing conflict. It will not, because it was expected. October 7th of last year, 2023, was when there was an early morning attack using rockets, paragliders, bombs, amphibious vehicles. All of them were used by Hamas to breach the security cordon created in southern Israel. Now, when Hamas did that successfully, Hamas first of all made it show to the world that Israel is not as strong as it presents itself. Hamas went further in the course of the attack to shoot youths that were having a beach concert indiscriminately. Hamas also went ahead to take hostages, particularly people that were physically challenged, that had health challenges, that were home and bedridden. Many of them were evacuated. In fact, a total of 1,200 fatalities were recorded that very day on the Israeli side. Then over 253 hostages were taken, about that number, 253, when they did a final count. And from then till now, it has been a different story we are hearing. First, the Israeli government took 3 weeks to pull forces together and declared that they were going to enter into Gaza and see to the end of Hamas, and that they will not rest until all Hamas members that they can identify are either isolated or eliminated. That is what Israel has been pushing. The narrative started from the northern part of Gaza, where the Israelis told civilians and others to move to the southern part of Gaza. Gaza City was the main target of the special military operation by the IDF. The Israeli government is a coalition government. Of course, you need to have support from all groups to be able to carry out such massive operation. And since then, the total fatalities on the side of the Palestinians, let us be very frank, it's astronomical. It has crossed 40,000 plus and counting. On the side of the IDF, the total fatalities that are recorded is less than 300. In the course of the engagement, the Israelis and the Palestinians, of course, both sides listen to third parties interested parties, the United States of America, United Kingdom, even United Nations Organization, then Russia and China, they all spoke, as would be expected. And they have been trying to broker a truce to put a stop to the hostilities on the side of Israel, get the hostages released, and as an act of good faith, there was a prisoner swap deal that was agreed upon, by which over 100 of the hostages have been released to Israel in exchange for over almost, because the Palestinians are Hamas is demanding for over 4,500 Palestinians that are in Israeli custody. So Israel has released a sizable number. I think I'm not sure of the exact number, yeah, but it's already about 1,000. So proportionally, Israel has given out more. Hamas is now saying that the conditions under which they will release the remaining hostages will be that Israel should pull out her forces from Gaza. Meanwhile, Israel has gone beyond Gaza City. Now they've gone to Khan Yunis, which is the second largest city in Gaza. And Gaza is just 10 kilometers by 25 kilometers wide. You know, 25 kilometers long, 10 kilometers wide. So, no, 40 by 10. So you look at that space, it's a very small space. Yet the population that is clumped into that very small enclave.
Some use the word trapped.
Well, we'll get to that, whether we were trapped, because it's a part of the realistic reaction to issues. People tend to be very emotional. When you are discussing issues, you have to be very clinical. If you want to treat cancer, you are not going to be saying you will not do this. You have to be very clinical. What is the objective? What is the long-term effect of this? Let's get back to the narrative. So, the population of Gaza Strip is 2 million plus. Really, it is tight. Now, there's a sudden uprooting. Israel insisted that move to the safe corridors that they have created in the south. And when the onslaught started, Israel discovered so many tunnels inside Gaza City that were used to ferry in arms and ammunition, from which rockets were launched into Israel in different parts of Israel. Israel will not fold her hands and watch. She has gone into most of those tunnels, broken down all the structures. That's why most of the strikes are actually tied to buildings that have tunnels under them. Then they went as far as Khan Yunis now. Khan Yunis is closer to Rafah crossing, which is at the southern tip of Gaza, which has a common border with Egypt. Egypt has maintained a strict barricade at the end of Gaza because the Egyptians do not want the fallout, the corollary of that attack to come to their side. They've suffered a lot before on the part of the Palestinians. They've lost Sinai Peninsula before, which later they recovered by some international agreements with Israel. So the Egyptians are maintaining their position. Israelis are also maintaining another strict corridor. Even the corridor that was given for aid to come in is very tight. The Israelis are insisting that they will monitor it closely because arms and ammunition can still be smuggled in. And interestingly, we should be a bit forthright in this kind of evaluation. Hamas fighters do not wear uniform. They look like ordinary Palestinians. They can look like anybody. But the Israeli Defense Forces are uniformed, so they can easily be targeted. So this is an asymmetric kind of warfare. You are fighting people that you don't really know their physical identity because they can match to the background. And they use, it is also clear that Hamas use human shield frequently. And they particularly use women and children to gain more acceptance, more sympathy from the world. But the question again is, the people that were shot that day they crossed the security line into Israel, are they not human? And Israelis have maintained a policy over the years, which is the reason why Israel is surviving as a state, that for every Israeli life that is taken, the Palestinians will account. And the number is scaling up gradually. Those days, they used to say for every one Israeli life, 100. Later, it was one Israeli life, 1,000. Of course, we don't have a document to say this is proof, but by practice, we are saying it. Now, since October 7th, last year when this matter started, when Israel started our own response, 3 weeks later, which was the end of October, early November, from then till now, the total fatalities on the side of Palestinians is over 40,000. Compared to total fatalities on the side of Israel, that is less than, let's just say, breaching 2,000 plus. So pragmatically, the Palestinians are on the losing side. But Hamas is not. Hamas is still giving conditions that Israel must pull out her forces. Israel must leave that southern part of Gaza where they are maintaining a particular line of security with the Egyptian forces. And that is the part, that is actually where they get most of their arms from. Most of their arms are smuggled through the Rafah border crossing. Because you cannot get from the sea because Israel maintains very strict hold in that area. Now, if you look at it, therefore, Israel controls the land borders of Gaza, Israel controls the airspace and the sea access. They don't have a port that's not under Israeli control. And remember, Hamas forcefully displaced the Palestinian Authority from Gaza in 2006. So then they've been very powerful. And they are getting acceptability even in West Bank, where the Palestinian Authority holds sway. Hezbollah in Jordan is also supporting Hamas. And remember, Hamas and Hezbollah have been declared as terrorist organizations. And terrorism thrives by bringing attention to their cause by acts of violence, usually targeted at civilians. Okay. The challenge that the Israeli government is facing is political. It is not in the area of the conflict that the Israeli government has a challenge, because the Israeli government cannot go into Gaza and use what we can discuss as nuclear weapons. No, they will have to go conventional. And in conventional warfare, in this particular case, it's more like guerrilla warfare, where you are fighting from house to house, door to door, street to street. So it's more difficult. It's not like an open field battle that you stage where soldiers are shooting at other soldiers. These are non-uniformed combatants. And they have series of tunnels that are still undiscovered that they can hide and launch attacks. While they are fighting the IDF forces on ground, they are still launching attacks into different cities in Israel. And the Israelis are retaliating. All right, what is difficult here is that the coalition government is having a tough time coming to terms as to how to best handle the issue of hostage and prisoner swap. That's essentially the challenge. The 6 bodies that were discovered, female included, it was a big loss to the Israelis, who are believing that as they are engaging with Hamas, showing some element of consideration by releasing those who are in prison, Palestinians who are in prison, Hamas should be more compliant. But what is interesting is that Hamas must not be seen in the mode the Israeli government should be seen. This is where it's a bit of a problem. Hamas is not held back by the rules of engagement that the Israeli government operates with. So the world, most governments, most opinion leaders, most groups tend to always ask Israel to apply restraint, to exercise restraint in dealing with Hamas. Hamas is not being given that kind of condition because Hamas will not even listen to such conditions anyway. And now the Israelis are asking, where are the hostages? Most of them were hidden in tunnels. Most of them were hidden in the homes of Hamas leaders. Now, it will be difficult to even get to them unless you have high-level intelligence, which Israel is using by all means available to her to protect the lives of the hostages. Yet, the public opinion in Israel is cut a deal as fast as possible. And do not forget that there's a policy position. You don't negotiate with terrorists.
Now, talking about not negotiating with terrorists, and right now there is strike in Israel with thousands coming out to vent their anger against the government that Netanyahu was saying that is not doing enough. Even Joe Biden said this, but it's not doing enough. Really, is the man Netanyahu doing enough?
This becomes a very rhetorical question. 40,000 Palestinians have been eliminated. And most of them are civilians. The same people that are saying Benjamin Netanyahu is not doing enough are the ones asking to exercise restraint. Hamas is not willing to discuss amicable terms. Hamas is imposing conditions because, let me use the word, they have nuisance value. They are irritable. In fact, they are irritants in this matter. Israel is like a large elephant here. Hamas is like a gnat that has entered the trunk of the elephant. So the elephant is sneezing, wheezing, and the gnat is inside its trunk. So it will take a lot of effort to flush it out and stamp it to death, if possible. And I did say some time ago that it should not be possible to totally capture and eliminate Hamas, because Hamas is more like an amorphous. They have sympathizers, they have people who are willing to join at the flick of a coin. So you cannot suddenly compress Hamas and wish them out of existence. And in that situation, the government in Israel is looking at different ends. People are saying, go and cut a deal. What will it cost to cut a deal? The cost may be so astronomical that it's better to, in the rule, let a few go and save the majority. And that is why in public policy evaluation, those who lead government will always consider the majority interest above a minority. So asking them to go and cut a deal with Hamas will necessarily appear as if it should just grant all their wishes. And one of the conditions that Hamas has said is that Israeli forces should be pulled out of Gaza. And out of Khan Yunis altogether. That will not be possible. Israel will not grant that. So it means there's a deadlock. And in negotiation, when you put impossible conditions before a supposedly, in quotes, superior or more powerful opponent, you don't want resolution. And in negotiation, you must be ready to grant concessions and compromise. When you grant concessions, those concessions are also going to give you some mutual consideration from the other party. This is the challenge we are having here. And we do know that most times, the fundamentalist organizations tend to be maintaining hardline stance. They will tell you, we will not shift from this unless you have this. Recently, clearly speaking, Hamas has a dedicated objective to the establishment of Israel as a state. Is that going to be possible? We are going to see if it will ever come to reality. Israel as a state is willing to accommodate, but is giving conditions. Of course, both will give conditions. The question now will be, who has greater capacity to enforce their position? The U.S. has been the major supporter of Israel, yes, spending over $260 billion in military and economic aid to the sustenance of the state of Israel.
But now, for Biden to say that he's not doing enough, do you think those aid will, be reduced? As it stands right now, 6 dead hostages were recovered. That's a plus of the mentality of Benjamin Netanyahu will say that these guys are not playing fair. And you are saying the way they're going about it is too much, you're not doing enough. Do you think there'll be a cut? Don't forget what UK did. Out of 530 or 350 something, they reduced, they just took out 13 out of the number given to Israel, just as a sign for Israel to at least cut a deal. That's why I asked the question, would there be a change in this? Because right now the Israelis are protesting, saying you're not doing enough. We want our people back home.
You know, the spectators in a football match will tell you, play it like this, do it like this, like this. Put them in the field of play. And they will now see that pitch will now look as if it's a vast land, an expanse that is not surmountable. So when you're on the sidelines, you see things already from the man that is in the center of the matter. Netanyahu is the one sitting as an elected leader of his country who had to go to negotiation with different parties to create a government. A decision like that is not a unilateral decision. It's not a dictator. It will go through some process of review, evaluation, and those who are telling from outside, go and cut a deal, go and cut a deal. Reverse the discussion. If it is Hamas that has the upper hand in this matter, will Israel still be existing by now? If it's Hamas that has nuclear capability, would they likely not use it? If it's the U.S. that is having this kind of onslaught from a fundamentalist, or let us use it appropriate term as they have classified them, a terrorist organization, will the U.S. be waiting for negotiation, for release of hostages, or they will go all out? When the U.S. went to Iraq in 1991, the first Gulf War, did they wait? The coalition of the willing that they moved for the Second Gulf War. What was the objective? Operation Desert Storm was the first one. They got assent from the United Nations Security Council, and they moved forces. And that was what eventually led to the fall of Saddam Hussein of Iraq. So sometimes when you are asking a government, do this quickly, the government is also seeing some other claims. I've just mentioned the conditions that Hamas set for Israel. Israel also set a condition for Hamas: release our hostages first. If they are dead, bring their corpses. When the Israeli forces successfully recovered one of the hostages, the hostage was, interestingly, a Bedouin Arab and a Muslim. He recounted his experiences, that the treatment was inhuman. And the only leverage that he got as a hostage was that he was allowed to pray, because he is a Muslim. Beyond that, they did not give him any consideration. And these are Muslims fighting for a cause that is closely tied to their faith. Now, a fellow adherent is in your care or in your custody. You did not give him better treatment than you gave to the others. And they were all kept in tunnels. In fact, the man admitted that for months, he didn't see sunlight. He was underground. Remember, this started since last year. It's almost a year.
It's going to a year now.
And you are asking Israel, do more, do more. The more you are asking Israel to do will lead to more loss of lives. Let's be very pragmatic. Because if the IDF is to go all out to try and recover the remaining hostages, whichever way, which is going to be very difficult, because Hamas has a network of tunnels all over Gaza. And they've hidden these people in different locations. They are not hosted in one position.
No,
not as if there's a warehouse that they kept all of them, or a safe house, or a storage point. No, they were dispersed all over Israel. Some of them are actually possibly no longer alive in this time and place with us. We are aware. But Israel is saying, even if some are dead, okay, bring them back. It was when the Israeli forces were able to rescue the other malas and discovered that, oh, there were also some hostages that were already dead. And in the last exchange, they gave up a corpse. They agreed. You took these people away. You cannot even give them the measure. If you were to do an evaluation, okay, let's do what we call point-by-point evaluation. The Palestinian hostages that are in Israeli prisons, are they in the same condition that the hostages that are with Hamas are presently? If they are not, those Israelis that are blaming Netanyahu, that he must bring back their families, do they also realize that the soldiers, the members of the Israeli Defense Forces that are fighting day and night, they also put their lives on the line? They are not robots. They are not androids that were created in a factory to go and try, and if they are shot, okay, they will just be written off. They are humans.
They are humans. Okay,
and we are aware that over almost 300 of the IDF forces have been
neutralized. Now, with this strike in Israel, how do you think Netanyahu will react to it? Is it going to pay deaf ears to what the world is saying and go all out? Or he's going to listen a little bit and withdraw some of his forces for at least a ceasefire to happen? Because it's like the man is under pressure from both ends, even from allies. Some are saying stop. His are saying no, go ahead, bring them back home. Put us in this position.
Most of the time,
yeah,
people are seeing Israel as if Israel is just an appendage of the U.S., the arm of the U.S. in the Middle East. They forget that Israel is also existing as an independent entity. Have we considered the fact that Israel has a self-sustaining capability? Even though she asked for those aid is more like what she will use first. She has her own reserve, which she is going to likely deploy. And between you and me, and for whoever cares to listen, I don't believe Netanyahu is going to step back. I don't believe he will step back, because stepping back at this point will be almost a reversal of the gains. The global pressure that he is facing is to minimize as much as possible the fatalities of women and children, or let me use the word, this escalating number of refugees that has occurred as a result of displacement of civilians in Gaza. That's already a challenge. West Bank is boiling. Hamas has a lot of supporters in West Bank. Hezbollah, to the north of Israel, would have even joined the conflict if not for that. The U.S. in her wisdom quickly stationed
submarine ships and aircraft carriers, yes, in the sea.
The sea there. And, of course, there have been some cyber attack. They've launched some rockets into Lebanon to tell Lebanese that if you create a new theater of war, we have resources for that. So it's a cauldron. It's boiling. And if you heat up a cauldron, it cannot cool suddenly. There must be a timeline. So if you're asking Netanyahu, how soon are you bringing this back home? The best generals know when war will start. They can never tell you when the war will end. Whoever is asking Netanyahu to do the needful should also ask Hamas to do the needful. It's not Netanyahu alone that is in this matter. It's almost as if it's a one-sided dialogue. And this is almost like a dialogue of the deaf. It's not one person that is involved. There are two parties in this conflict. Each party has supporters. For instance, as it is now, Russia and China, they've not even condemned Hamas. Rather, they are heaping the blame on U.S. policies that support Israel because their own beef is with the U.S. They are not facing Israel per se. Syria is decidedly on the side of Hamas. Syria has not been able to make great inroad to this crisis because of our internal challenges.
Yeah.
Lebanon is spoiling for a fight, but Lebanon is also wary. If Israel could go to this extreme, let me use that term responsibly, with Hamas, only God knows if Lebanon joins. Because Netanyahu made it clear, if Lebanon should allow Hezbollah to become a new theater of activity, they are ready. And Israel has always fought for her survival from 1948. Have we forgotten that for a period, I think for almost 16 years, the same Gaza was under Egyptian control from 48 to 67. Egypt controlled Gaza. Egyptians, are they not Arabs? Are they not Muslims predominantly? The Palestinians, what are they? Predominantly Muslims. And they're supposed to be having this kinship. Yet, the Palestinians, do they really listen to other Islamic or Muslim countries? If they do, why have they not been able to at least prevail on them to change their tactics? Because the blame is always on Israel. I feel for Israel in a way, because Israel will have to survive. And that's the first rule of any living entity. Self-survival. Then we can call it enlightened self-interest. You will not expect the Israelis to be pleading the case of the Palestinians. The Israelis will plead their own case. And since they have the upper hand in this debacle, we cannot remove from that fact. Israel will decide it has to show that upper hand, because that was what Hamas wanted to expose to the world, that Israel has become weak enough for them to launch an attack. The Israelis said, no problem, you did. We will respond. And this is the response.
Wow. Well, as it stands now, it's like we are in a situation whereby we don't really know who to heap the blame on, because it's like what Israel is fighting for is not coming into fruition. Release those hostages, and Hamas is still holding on to them, given conditions. How do you think this will end?
It's very difficult to resolve any conflict, especially when parties that are outside that conflict support disparate objectives. China will support for our own interest, not for the interest of Hamas or the Palestinians alone, because all Palestinians are not Hamas. Hamas is part of the state, the Palestinian enclave. We must know that. There are others. There are even Christians, Palestinian Christians. There are Palestinians who are Jews, and there are predominantly Palestinian Muslims. So the narrative is not going to be very easy to just say this group can take the call. Let's also look at the fact that on the side of Israel, the population of Israel is about 67% Jewish. There are Arabs, and there are others. We must also look at the fact that each of them will look at their own interests. The U.S. as the major supporter of Israel is also having her own interest. She must protect her image as a global power. China, as I've mentioned before, looks at her interest in the East. China is actually more of to see who will have the upper hand and make her own decision. Russia is openly in support of Hamas through her close association with Syria and Lebanon. The Lebanese, they have Hezbollah, another terrorist organization that is very much like Hamas, always attacking Israel. Israelis will retaliate. Most times, the Israelis will even go after them when they have intelligence that they are preparing for an attack. And that was the first claim that Hamas made on October 7, 2023, that if Israel was this powerful, how come they were blindsided? How come they did not know that such an attack was to be launched? Some people even begin to argue that it's possible the Israelis allowed it so that they will be able to deal with Hamas. But did Hamas consider the long-term implication of their action before they launched that attack? If they did, are they capable of sustaining it by keeping hostages and asking for prisoner swap, and which Israel has agreed to? To what extent will Israel accede to such requests? So these are questions that are very futuristic.
Wow.
They cannot be answered in the immediate, because as time and opportunity proceed, we are going to see changes in the narrative. We don't even know what will likely happen tomorrow, but we do know that most Israelis are insisting that the government should do everything possible. And that may be another impetus for the government to launch more attacks.
More attacks.
But we're going to tell you that this is the best way we can go about it. We are negotiating with them. They are not willing to move. They are not willing to grant our concessions. Then we'll go all out and use brute force. Wow. Maybe that will work. And most of the hostages are hidden in different parts of Gaza. Inside tunnels. So they're not in the open.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Prof. I really appreciate the wonderful analysis. Like what you said, things can just come up. Because as it stands right now, we don't know where or how or when things will turn. But events are folding. Netanyahu is under pressure to deliver those hostages. Hamas is still dilly-dallying, still making demands. How do you think all this will pan out? The UK, on the other hand, choose to remove 13 out of 350, agreed weapons supply to Israel. Will that stop Israel? Don't forget they have their own weapons, they have their own store, they are ready. U.S. also, President Joe Biden said, Netanyahu, you're not doing enough. How much more do you want the man to do? Pressure from outside, pressure from inside, pressure from friends. Is it going to explode and go all out and say, okay, fine, whether we see them or not, take them all out? If we should go berserk, what will be the fallout? Will they also be happy with Israel? Or do you feel that you'll maintain the surgical operation you've been trying to maintain? Going after Hamas tunnel, neutralizing them one at a time? Quite complex, quite difficult. But definitely, time will tell. Prof, thank you once more. I appreciate your coming. We also do it again next week Tuesday, God willing. Bye for now.